Not even bring myself into the show yet. I'm amateur hour over here. Welcome back into the Prime Sports world. Welcome into a Thursday episode where we're going to predict the winners of some position battles around the National Football League as we are in the preseason. Of course, your host, David On Point. TJ Hopkins should be joining us back here in a few minutes here. I think he just dropped out. We're going to. Yeah, that was my bad, brother. My bad, man. I didn't realize I didn't add us to the show like at the very beginning. And I started talking and I'm like, I realized, hey, I didn't put myself on the show. This has been Prime Sports World. Welcome into the show. If you're looking for consistent content on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, you come to the right place. We go live basically every single day, bringing the most up-to-date content, including today, where we're going to predict who's going to be winning some preseason position battles. I'm going to share the StreamYard link into all of the places. So if you want to join us to talk about these position battles, if this happens to be your favorite team we're talking about, more than welcome to join in. We'll let you into the show. Obviously, keep your comments PG. Also, please like, share, and subscribe because every single like, every single subscriber, every single share helps us build this brand. And that's what we're trying to do here at Prime Sports World. DJ, happy Thursday, man. How are you, buddy?
Got some high school football on. They showcasing two schools from Texas. One is Lake Travis, who has produced a lot of NFL talent, starting with recent first-round pick Garrett Wilson from the Jets. Baker Mayfield went to high school here. Garrett Gilbert went to high school there. Brendan James, who currently plays for the Chargers, he's an offensive lineman. And they produce some talent.
You love to see it. This show was mostly motivated, it's incentivized by the fact that, Baker Mayfield won the job for the Carolina Panthers. I think that happened yesterday. Teams are going to be making decisions here about who's going to be their starting quarterback here in the next couple of weeks. Not just starting quarterback, at all positions in the National Football League. So I wanted to talk about some key position battles that I think are interesting, like as we get into the final preseason game, about who's going to be winning these particular position battles. Let's take a look, TJ, and I'll let you, we can weigh in on who you think is going to win each individual battle. Let's start with the quarterback position. I try to keep it versatile, so I try to do a couple wider range of different positions. I got a couple corners in there. I got defensive end, wide receivers, running backs, and I got quarterbacks. So let's start at the quarterback position. Let's talk about that starting quarterback job with the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the running is still Mitchell Trubisky, who they signed in free agency. Mason Rudolph, who's the heir apparent, I guess, the incumbent, who's been on the team for a few years and started a few games there. And then Kenny Pickett, who was the first-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers back in this year's draft, pick number 20 overall. All three of them have been reasonably good in the preseason. We don't really know how they looked in practice because we don't have that kind of insider information. But in preseason, all three of these guys have played well. TJ, if you are going to put on your prediction hat or break out your crystal ball, who will be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1? Who's going to win this preseason battle?
First, though, let me just say, I think it's actually a two-man race between between Trubisky and Pickett. I know what Mason Rudolph is.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just put him in there because he's gotten some snaps and he's played a little bit.
And more importantly, Mike Tomlin knows what Mason Rudolph is. If they felt that Mason Rudolph was the heir apparent that they thought he would be when they initially drafted him to replace Big Ben, Trubisky's not on this roster, and they don't draft Kenny Pickett at all.
I agree with you. All right, so let's talk about the two guys that are real legitimately in the running. Mr. Trubisky, signed him in free agency. Mm-hmm. And Kenny Pickett, first-round pick.
Kenny Pickett.
Both of them have been excellent this in preseason so far. So
Kenny Pickett basically grew up in Pittsburgh's backyard. Right?
He played his college games in the stadium he's going to be playing his pro games in. They
share the same practice facility. Instead of turning one direction to go to the Pittsburgh, to the college side, he's going to turn the other direction to go to the Steelers side. Right? So it's almost like the transition is easy. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to move. I don't have to uproot my family if they're there with me. I don't know his personal life or anything like that.
I don't know his personal life either. So,
it's really a comfortability factor that plays into that. They know him. They know him, right? They know him, but All he has to do is show that he can play at a NFL level. Trubisky, on the other hand, has shown you have flashes of why the Bears took you second overall back in 2017. The issue is that you've never been able to put it all together.
And you can make the argument he might be playing with the best supporting cast outside. I mean, arguably in the offensive line, he might be playing with the best supporting cast he's ever had.
Outside of
I'm not even sure that's that big of a stretch.
Outside of that 2018 year, let's see, Najee Harris, Jordan Howard. Yeah, I don't know who the backup running back is in Pittsburgh because the Bears was using.
I think it was Benny Snell, but they did.
So you had you kind of had a two-man combo of Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, and then the receiving core absolutely Chase Claypool.
I mean, the kid from Georgia and Deontay Johnson. That doesn't even Pat Freiermuth had a really good rookie season. Yeah, George Pickens, thank you.
Who's a solid tight end. And what's his name? Freiermuth? No, you said
Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth. Yeah. Really good tight end.
Back to 2018, Allen Robinson, who you signed in free agency, Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton, and that was. Am I missing anybody from that? And rookie Anthony Miller. It's on par with that. Maybe I think the O-line that he had in 2018 may be better. I give a slight edge to that offensive line that he had.
The one in the Bears, I think it was probably a little bit better than the one he's going to have in.
Coaching, on the other hand, hands down, without a doubt, not close.
Night and day. But this conversation is really about picking who's going to be the starting quarterback week number 1, and I think it's going to be Mitchell Trubisky because I know Kenny Pickett was drafted in the first round. I know he's going to eventually see some time on the football field, depending on how the season goes. But this is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that still thinks they can compete for something here. And I think they want to go with the guy who gives them the best opportunity to win games, and that is Mitchell Trubisky, at least today.
Right. And
so I'm going to take Trubisky to be the star week 1.
I don't hate that, and I also don't have a problem. I also wouldn't have a problem if they started Kenny Pickett again. You know what Rudolph is. You have an idea of what Mitch Trubisky is, and the one you don't is Kenny Pickett. Seriously.
I think the thing you worry about with Kenny Pickett is the fact that this might be, if not the worst offensive line in the bottom 5. And I don't know if you want to necessarily put it on a guy who's not as mobile as a Mr. Trubisky is behind an offensive line this bad, at least not right away.
I mean, he's mobile. I think he's mobile enough. Like, remember he caused a bit of controversy.
I remember
with the fake slide move, and that kind of was like, hey,
he made the NCAA make a rule change.
Make a rule.
Like
the Kenny Pickett rule: quarterbacks can't fake slide and keep running. Like, they can't do that anymore. Me personally, I think I would go with Kenny Pickett just to find out what he is like. It doesn't matter that I get it. Like, you think you're in you are going to be in a dog fight in that division. You are going to be. It's now back to a 3-team race with you, Baltimore, and Cincinnati because Cleveland ain't got their starting quarterback for 11 games. A lot can happen in those 11 games.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting quarterback for sure, but we don't know how injuries are going to play out. I mean, injuries have a major toll on NFL rosters. Look at every season that's ever been a thing. Like, injuries have decided that season in one way or another.
So, I don't again, I wouldn't mind if Trubisky got the start. I also wouldn't mind if Kenny Pickett got the start, but I'm going Kenny Pickett. You're going Mr. Trubisky. If Trubisky's the start of week 1, I ain't going to lose no sleep.
I'm not going to lose any sleep either. I think with Kenny Pickett, if he ends up being the guy too, I wouldn't lose sleep over that. I think I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer here.
No, yeah, you're right. This is one of those there's no wrong answer. There's no.
I think no matter who the guy ends up being, I think it'll be a good decision because I think they have their coached well enough that it won't matter. Let's move on to the other starting quarterback decision that I think is still interesting on this clock. Outside of the backup stuff, like who's going to be the backup to Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. Who knows? Starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks between Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Pete Carroll, we talked about this yesterday, I believe. He's going to push the decision as far into the offseason, as far to starting day as he can. But when you think when all said and done, who will be the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks when the season starts? Both of these guys played particularly well in their first preseason game. Geno Smith really struggled in his second preseason game. Drew Lock was unable to play in that game because of COVID. But who wins the job when it's all said and done?
It's Drew Lock. It's not close. I know Geno Smith has been in the league for what? A decade? A decade?
Something like that. I don't know. Something like that, yeah.
I know what he is. Like I
think the other thing that really matters here is the fact that the Seattle Seahawks know who he is because he's been in their locker room for a while.
Well, wow, now he's been backing up Russell Wilson for a long time.
3 years, and like I think if they had felt comfortable enough with going with Geno Smith, they wouldn't even have included Drew Lock in the trade.
Exactly. So it's Drew Lock. It's Drew Lock. It's not close.
And I think the other thing is I think there's somewhat of this like notion there that there's some untapped potential when it comes to Drew Lock, right? Because I think people look at his arm talent, they're like, yeah, that's a guy we still want to see if there's anything there. I mean, that's why people like Josh Rosen continue to got chances in the NFL. Like Ryan Mallett kept getting jobs in the NFL when he had no business being in the NFL still, because they look at his arm, they look at the skill set, and they're like, yeah, we can make something out of this guy if we get him in the right place.
And they look at. Like you also got to remember Ryan Mallett was like 6'5", bro. Like
Ryan Mallett was a massive human being, like with a massive arm to go with it.
He just couldn't put it together. Like he kept getting in trouble. He had off the field issues.
Yeah.
At Arkansas, like he was picked to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady, and he was bad. He was bad with the media. He had bad interviews during the draft process, which is why he failed as far as he did. But back to Seattle, it's Drew Lock. It's not close.
I tend to agree with you on that. I think it'll be interesting to see how they end up playing this season. I'm sure they're going to stink or be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And like if they get enough out of Drew Lock, maybe they can trade him somewhere and use that first round pick somewhere on something else. But yeah, I think it's for sure Drew Lock. Let's move on to the running backs on there. We got a bunch of running backs. The first one is all of them are actually a trifecta of running backs. Who do you think will end up being the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills? Devin Singletary, not Riddick Moss. His first name is Zach Moss. Thank you. Man, I'm rolling the clock back with that Riddick Moss reference, man. Do you remember Riddick Moss when he used to play for the Detroit Lions? That is rolling the clock back, man, for sure. And then James Cook, Dalvin Cook's brother. But who will be the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills when the season starts? Singletary, extremely good towards the tail end of last season, but neither of those guys and Moss have really got a stranglehold on this job. And the Buffalo Bills did use a second-round pick on Cook this offseason.
All of them. I think it's going to depend on the formation. Like they're going to all get carries in the same game. Like I don't really think to ask who's the starting running back of the Buffalo Bills? First off, it's Josh Allen. Second of all, like that's the thing about running back by committee, right? Like there's no clear cut starter because you basically got the same guy in three different dudes. Like they all do the same thing. All right, so I legit think it's going to depend on the formation. It's going to depend on. They are playing a situational running back with three different running backs. Situational football with three different running backs. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But I think when it comes to being week one starter, I think it'll be Devin Singletary. I think Devin Singletary played extremely well towards the end of last season. I think he's earned the opportunity to be the guy for at least the start of the season. I think it would be up. I think James Cook eventually will be the guy. I think they'd really like him, especially if he can become a consistent pass catcher out of the backfield. Look for James Cook to be the starting running back by the time the season ends. One of the other situations a little more murky is the Miami Dolphins situation, staying in the AFC East. That starting running back room because they basically signed three guys, even though they had Myles Gaskin and the other guy Ahmed, but they signed Raheem Mostert, who played with Mike McDaniels in 49ers. They had Chase Edmonds, who was also in the NFC West, who their head coach got to see close hand, and then Sony Michel, also in the NFC West last season. But the question for you is, who is going to be the starting running back week 1? Mostert, Edmonds, or Michel?
Well, because of the familiarity, I think it has to be Raheem Mostert. He knows the system. He knows what Mike McDaniels wants to run. He knows how he wants it, and he knows how he wants it done. So it has to be Raheem Mostert. Sony Michel and Chase Edmonds are going to be competing for outside reps. I also think this is going to be another situation where, just like up in Buffalo, like it's going to depend on the situation and what's going on around them. But I think for the most part, I think Raheem Mostert is going to get as long as he's healthy, Raheem Mostert is going to get a buck of those carries.
Yeah, he's coming off of a ligament tear, so a cartilage injury that required surgery that basically required him to miss most of the season. He's been medically cleared now, so he's good. He should be good to go for the start of the regular season. I think this is going to be a very much a committee. I think if Miami could trade Myles Gaskin and Ahmed, they would, because they don't need him. They're going to have to cut him anyways. But Mostert is familiar with Mike McDaniels. I think that means a lot here with this situation. A new head coach who's new to play calling, who's never called plays before. It's going to be in a new situation. Raheem Mostert will be the first and second down back. I actually think that Chase Edmonds will be the primary third down back, because he is an elite pass catcher at the running back position.
Don't hate it.
Yeah. Moving on, staying in the running back position. This time we're swinging from the AFC East to the NFC East. Let's talk about the starting running back for the Washington Commanders. So we got Antonio Gibson, who is the incumbent. We got Mike Gesicki. Oh, man, I don't know what I just spelled there.
J.D. McKissick?
Yeah, J.D. McKissick. Yeah, man, I'm running on fumes right now. Sorry. J.D. McKissick. Yeah, thank you. J.D. McKissick, and then Robinson, who is the running back they drafted out of Alabama, I believe in the second or third round. But Gibson has definitely fallen down the totem pole. I don't even know if this was even a conversation people were having a few months ago. But he fumbled in a preseason game. Then he was resorted to the special teams unit in their most recent preseason game. Not a good look for a guy who was nearly 1,000-yard running back each of the seasons he's been in the NFL. So who's going to be the starter?
I still think it should be Antonio Gibson. Again, one fumble in one preseason game does not knock you down the depth chart like that, right? Like it's criminal to even act like that. Like I don't know if something else is going on. Like I really don't, but it has it's Antonio Gibson, and this shouldn't even be I'm with you. It shouldn't even be a conversation.
But I think now that it has become a conversation, I think it for sure is one. And I do not think Antonio Gibson will be the starting running back of the.
It's still Antonio Gibson. I'm sorry.
I'm going to take. I think Brian Robinson will be. He started the game at the running back in the most recent preseason game. I think Brian Robinson will be the starting running back for this team when the season starts. I think they see something in him. They used to high pick in him. There is also the chance that they could go with the hot hand. Like both of those guys can have value and play a lot. I think Brian Robinson will ultimately be the starting running back in week number 1. And if you play fantasy football, I know, TJ, don't do it. I would avoid Antonio Gibson like the plague, because I do not know how much he's even going to be used this season. I just don't.
Fantasy. Sorry.
It's all right. But yeah, that situation is like when the preseason started, when off season started, like Antonio Gibson was a lock to be like their every down running back. I just think things have definitely shifted. Like there must be something they're seeing in training camp or something they're seeing during practice that they're just not liking, and he's for sure fallen into a kind of a bad situation. If I'm in Antonio Gibson, I don't know if I would feel very comfortable with where I'm at in that team right now. So. Moving on from there, swinging into the defensive side of this. Actually, let's do the Packers stuff first, and then we'll go into the defensive side of the football. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. And the question really is it not about like like who is going to be the number one wide receiver for this team when it's all said and done. Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, who basically is on the trade block right now, and Romeo Doubs, who's played well in their most recent preseason game. Watkins is on the active non-football injury list, so I guess he can't even play until like week 4 or 5. Can Randall Cobb finally found the youth? Will Amari Rodgers develop in year number 2? Doubs, a 4th-round pick, a wild card, or more reps. Who will be the number one wide receiver when the season starts? Now that Devontae Adams is no longer in the mix.
Me personally, I would take a flyer on Romeo.
And another better question. So in 3 wide receiver sets, who are the 3 wide receivers who play? So this is a 2-part question. So who's the number one? And 3 wide receiver sets, who are the 3 wide receivers on the field?
Well, I would take a flyer on Romeo. Is it Doubs or Dowds?
It's Doubs. So Dobbs? I think it's pronounced Dobbs. Or I don't know. I gotta be straight up honest with you. I'm not 100% sure.
I would take flyer. I think
if David Henderson is watching the show, please let us know how it's pronounced right there in the comment section.
I would go with him. Like, how tall is he? 6. What is he? 6'6". Bingo, pop right up. He is 6'2",
204. Yeah, he went to Nevada.
I would go with him. Alan Lazard has had ample time to establish himself with the best quarterback arguably the best quarterback in football. He hasn't done it. Randall Cobb is trying to find a family youth. Good luck. Father Time is undefeated for a reason.
Yes.
And same thing with did I say Alan Lazard? Yeah, I did. Amari Rodgers never really got I don't think he got a lot of reps at receiver last season.
No, he had like 4. He had like 4 catches last season.
He was primarily used as a return man, and I saw one fumble, like 1 muff punt, and they were like, "Up, cut him."
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, y'all are just.
So I think the way that this is going to eventually shake out, I think it's going to be Alan Lazard as their number one wide receiver. I know he's had all the opportunity, but he's the only one that has any familiarity with Aaron Rodgers. So I think he'll be the number one. When it comes to the 3 wide receiver set, I do think it'll be Sammy Watkins and this guy Romeo. I think there's something there with that 4th-round pick. I think they like him. I think that he'll have an opportunity to really shine. And I think you take a flyer. I mean, you know what Randall Cobb is at this point. You know. Amari Rodgers, you've seen him for a year and a half. He can't even get on the football field. I don't think it's very – and he's on the trade block. I think they want to get rid of him. Sammy Watkins, I think he still has some upside if he can tap into that Kansas City potential he had a few years ago where he was amazing in the playoffs when they went to the Super Bowl. That whole playoff run, Sammy Watkins was probably the third best player on the Kansas City Chiefs, or 4th maybe. But yeah, Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, and Romeo Doubs.
The issue with Sammy Watkins is we know Sammy Watkins is good for 12 games a year, 12 on the diet, right? And so he's another one of those guys. Like, all right, you know what he is, right? Like, Sammy Watkins has been around for a long time. You know what he is. You know what Sammy Watkins is. So I would go with Romeo Doubs at 1. I would stick with Randall Cobb at the slot or even a number 2, and I guess Alan Lazard can get that 3rd spot. And that's who I would go with as my in my 3 receiver sets. Them 3 right there.
Okay. I don't hate it. Moving on from there, we're going to swing into the defensive side of things. Let's talk about defensive end on the opposite side of Von Miller in Buffalo. Greg Rousseau, second-year player out of Miami. Boogie Basham, Vatek, I think he went to college last season. He was a 3rd-round pick out of in the draft last season. Wake Forest. And then they have AJ Epinesa, who's also on this roster, along with Shaq Lawson, who I think missed all of last season with an injury, who's finally back and healthy. So who will be the other starting defensive end on the other side of Von Miller? Will it be Rousseau, Basham, AJ Epinesa, or Shaq Lawson?
Probably Shaq Lawson. They feel like he was out last season. He probably normally does start. minus like if he's not injured anyway. So it's probably going to be him. Oh, and it's pronounced Dobbs, like Dobbs. I just looked it up. Sorry,
Thank
but
you.
yeah, it's like I would go Von Miller and Shaq Lawson. I get it. You got two dudes that you drafted that you gotta see what they are, and AJ Epinesa and Gregory Rousseau. So would I be upset if one of those guys got the start over a Shaq Lawson who is coming off an injury? Absolutely not, because you do gotta you do gotta see what those guys are. You gotta see that. Like it's like you can't be out there just drafting guys just to draft them. You gotta actually know if they can play this game called football. And you're in a championship push. So yeah.
I think the guy who has the highest upside, and I think will end up being the number one, the first over, the other defensive end on the outside of Von Miller will be Gregory Rousseau. He had a pretty good rookie season, 4 sacks, 42 solo tackles, 1 fumble, 1 pick. I look for him to take his game even further. He was an athletic freak when they drafted him. He was good in his rookie season. I expect him to take another step. I think the second guy in that list, I think, is Shaq Lawson as well. I think he's been established. He's been a proven edge rusher, and I think that's what you need when you're going to be doing like a push for a Lombardi Trophy here, which the Buffalo Bills surely are. But I do not think any of those guys are locked into stone. I think it'll be a sort of a carousel between Boogie Basham, Shaq Lawson, and Rousseau, all taking over that other edge rusher. I think AJ Epinesa, if they could get value for him in a trade, I think they would. I don't think he's part of their future plans.
And Greg Rousseau started all 17 games last season.
Yeah.
I don't know, why trade AJ Epinesa?
Well, I mean, if you could get something of value for him, I mean, he only had 1.5 sack last season, so I'm not sure what his value is. But like, you have depth at that position right now, and if you can get somewhere, if you can get another offensive lineman, which they really need, like another right tackle or right guard to shore up that side of their offensive line. If you could find a way to swing AJ Epinesa for like a proven offensive lineman, I think you should do that. I mean, you're in the championship push. I mean, having an extra defensive end that's hardly going to see the field, it's way less value than an offensive lineman that is going to be your swing tackle on your team.
Well, if that's the case, keep that same energy with Boogie Basham. He only has 2.5 career sacks.
Yeah, I know, but his rookie season. I mean, AJ Epinesa had 1 sack his rookie season. He played in 14 games. He had 1.5 sacks in his second season in 14 games too. I mean. So I could see a scenario where they're thinking about trading AJ Epinesa. I'm not saying I'm not ever heard any rumors, but like if there was like a guy that the Buffalo could trade that they could chew up their offensive line, which is one of their weak spots right now. I think they would do that, or if they should do that, in my opinion.
So trade a guy who has no value. Make it make sense.
I mean, he still has potential. I mean, some team can see this guy was a second round pick at one point. I think a team would especially if they're like a team that's not good and they just want to get rid of some guy for cap purposes. I think that's something that could happen. And especially if you attach a late first round or like a second or third round pick out to him too, or like a 4th round pick, I could see it.
Yeah, I don't, but I think he ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think if he was going to get traded, I think it would happen by now. I'm just saying that's one of the things. If I was a GM, I would be considering doing something like that. And then we're going to get into the cornerback portion of this show. Let's talk about the starting quarterback situation for the Tennessee Titans. We got Caleb Farley and their 1st round pick in this year's draft, or 2nd round pick in this year's draft. Roger McCreary, Caleb Farley coming off an ACL tear. They also have Christian Fulton in the mix here, and Elijah Bolden, who played a lot for them last season. Who do you think will be the starting number 1 corner for this team when the season starts? Caleb Fairley back in the mix, played in a preseason game, but hasn't been particularly good. Roger McCreary,
Which one had the back issue before they even got drafted?
Caleb Farley.
Then he's coming off a torn ACL.
Yep.
That's tough.
Yeah. I was hypercritical of the decision to take Caleb Farley when it happened. I still think it was a bad decision. A guy who's had all these concerns when you drafted him, and then he immediately gets hurt. You hate you hate to be like, I told you so, but like I said so when they first drafted him. It's going to be Roger McCreary, and then Christian Fulton will be the other corner. And Caleb Farley, if he can stay healthy and prove that he can actually play, because he hasn't been good at all in preseason, I think he'll be the nickel guy at best.
What's wrong with that?
What?
Say, what's wrong with that?
I mean, they did draft Caleb Farley to be their nickel corner. That's the problem with it.
Okay, stuff happens.
Stuff does happen.
Caleb Farley also didn't want to tear his ACL either.
No, he didn't. He didn't, but it happened.
It's like you make it sound like, oh, let me mess up my back and then let me tear my ACL. Then I'm going to be the nickel corner, because just to like, come on, man.
I'm saying the Titans didn't draft Caleb Farley to be their nickel. They wanted him to be their number one shutdown corner, and he has.
And who's to say it still can't happen?
Okay, fair enough.
Who's to say it's like that?
You're right, TJ. You're right, TJ. It could still happen. He could still be a Hall of Fame player. All pro.
I didn't say all that. I just said who's to say Who's to say he can't be the number one corner?
I think there's still an opportunity there, but I think if he doesn't win the number one cornerback job this season, it seems awfully unlikely that he'll get it back in future seasons.
No, that's fair.
But we'll see. To the Detroit Lions. This actually is the conversation for their second corner, not even their number one, because their number one corner is Amani. Man, I don't know how to pronounce this last name. It's Oruwariye. Oruwari is their number one corner. This is a conversation about their second corner and who's going to be the slot. So Will Harris has flashed a little bit in preseason, and Jeffrey Okudah has also looked really good and coming off an Achilles injury, which is not usually a great sign for a corner. It's hard injury to come back from because you do a lot of backpedaling, you do a lot of pushing off on your heel like that. But he has been decent in preseason so far, and he has looked good in training camp as the rumors. So who will be the number two corner when it's all said and done here between Mr. Will Harris, who's coming out? I think this is actually his he's 26. I think this is his third season.
It's probably going to be him. Like, Jeff Okudah is not going to be that guy, at least not for this season, coming off a torn Achilles. So next season, for sure, because he's going to have a whole offseason of training that is barring another injury if he doesn't get hurt. So right now, you make Jeff Okudah your slot guy, and you ride with the first guy and Will Harris as your 1 and 2. Unless one of those guys get hurt, and then you go from there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way they'll roll with it. I think this defense is going to stink anyways. I know adding Andy Hutchinson doesn't exactly put the Band-Aids on everything else wrong with this defense. So this defense is they'll play hard, but they're going to stink. And I think Will Harris has earned an opportunity. He played pretty decent last season as a member of this football team, with 62 solo tackles, 31 assists. He had a sack, he had a forced fumble, no picks, but look for him to be the starting corner and have Jeffrey Okudah in the nickel position as he tries to come back off that torn Achilles, because that's a tough injury to come back from for any position really, not just corner. And then swinging over to the Arizona Cardinals. This is also a conversation about the second corner and not necessarily the first, because Byron Murphy has the starting corner basically locked up. He's their number one cornerback. It's the conversation about their second corner and their nickel. So it's between Marco Wilson, who is quote-unquote the incumbent, and then it's Antonio Hamilton, who is a player that they've liked so far through the training camp process.
What's the name of the first guy again?
Antonio Hamilton. He is a seventh-year pro, South Carolina State. He has bounced around the league a little bit. He played 2 seasons in Oakland. He played 2 seasons in New York. He played a season in Kansas City, and now he's played his second season as a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Marco Wilson is 23. He was a fourth-round pick in 2021. He was the starting corner on the other side of Byron Murphy last season. We put up 40 tackles, 8 assists, had 2 forced fumbles.
There you go.
What do you mean, there you go? So you think Marco Wilson ends up being the number 2, and then you have Antonio Hamilton as your nickel?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily hate that. I think that's actually probably the way they'll go. Yeah. So any position battles that I did not put in this list that you think are interesting before we wrap up here on the show today?
Yeah, who's number two receiver on the Bears? That kind of does matter.
Man, I don't know. To be honest with you, I know it's not the green to kill Harry. I actually gotta look at their roster for real. Who do you think it's gonna be? You tell me.
Well, N'Keal Harry's out, so is Byron Pringle. Byron Pringle's gonna be back before N'Keal Harry is.
It's probably gonna be Velus Jones Jr. as long as he continues to progress in the kickoff game. And Tajay Sharp has looked good. I think he's hurt now, though. Tajay Sharp has looked good in preseason games. I actually think it's going to be Tajay Sharp will be their number 2 guy, if I had to pick a guy.
I don't hate that.
Any other ones that I may have missed as key position battles going into as the season gets ready to start here in about 10 days?
The Patriots have receiver questions.
I think Devontae Parker is their number 1. They traded for him. They gave up some assets for him, and he was good for brief spirits when he's healthy.
Yeah, they have more pressing concerns with who's calling plays. Like that's what you should have put on here. That's a position battle.
We talked about that last week, though. I mean, if you want to talk about offensive line, you got the Las Vegas Raiders when it comes to Brandon Parker, Alex Leatherwood fighting to be the starting right tackle. But Alex Leatherwood has been so bad I don't think that's even a competition anymore. Like Alex Leatherwood's going to be like the starting right guard at best now. Like,
Jesus Christ.
You gonna be okay there? You gonna be all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, who's no? That's Micah Parsons. Never mind.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, like, is he though? Like, is he? Are they just like dictating Micah Parsons? Like, you're just an edge rusher right now. Like, is that all he's gonna do?
Yeah, probably. Like, I mean, there's anything wrong with that.
No. There's nothing wrong with that. I was just because like he's a Swiss Army knife for him. Like he can drop.
I think it would be more interesting if they moved him around. But I think they need him because they lost Randy Gregory. They kind of need a pass rusher to replace him. So,
and in Arizona, who's the number 2 edge rusher there? I mean, we kind of touched on that when we did their season preview. Like, who's on the opposite side? Who's on the opposite side of JJ Watt? Like, that's a serious. Like,
probably it's supposed to be Zayvon Collins, but he hasn't been remotely all that good in the NFL. Zach Allen is an option. I don't know. We talked about this when we did the season preview. I don't really know. I mean, we'll have to see who steps up.
Same thing with Isaiah Wilson, who's playing corner in Minnesota.
I mean, outside of Patrick Peterson, I couldn't answer that question. I know they have the kid that went to that crazy tackle in college that's still there. They like. Hold on a second. I'll pull up his name real quick. Yeah, Cameron Dantzler is the guy that they like there. Andrew Booth Jr. was a second-round pick this season. Expect him to be their nickel guy, probably.
Don't hate that. For what it's worth, I don't know if you saw this, but Denzel Mims has requested a trade from the Jets.
Don't you have to be like remotely productive to request a trade?
Are you in the position to be productive?
I mean, I guess, but still, like,
no.
I mean,
it kind of does go hand in hand. Like, are you in a position to help me be productive? Like, it kind of does go hand in hand. He was.
I'm sure, but like, I just always find it interesting when these players that like have accomplished nothing in the NFL. Like, I want to get traded out of here. Trade me away.
He initially asked to be cut, and they said no.
He may be a cut. They might cut him when they cut down to 53 people. Like, I think they have so many wide receivers there. Like, we'll see what happens.
You got him. You got him. You just drafted Garrett Wilson. You got Elijah Moore. Am I missing? And who's the other? Oh, who am I missing?
I mean, I have Corey Corey Davis. Corey
Davis.
Yeah, they have Corey Davis still on that roster, and they got the guy they drafted. They have Elijah Moore, who they like. But yeah, we'll see how these all end up shaking out. I think the plan is for Izzy to run the college football show tomorrow because college football starts Saturday. It might actually get started on Friday. There's probably a game on Friday. There's probably a game on right now that you can watch if you want to watch some college football. Because preseason is again.
Everything starts this.
Teacher just froze out. Because if you wanted to watch the NFL and you don't have NFL Network, you can't watch the preseason. The NFL needs to really do something about that because it's been a real problem for a while. But I'm with David Huppin right there. This is TJ Hopkins. He's frozen up, but it's all good. Izzy is running his college football show tomorrow. You don't want to miss that content. He's going to be previewing some stuff and talking about week 1. So make sure you check out that content. I've been David Huppin. Right there is Mr. TJ Hopkins, and we bring the heat here at Prime Sports World. And please like, share, and subscribe. Because we will be back here tomorrow. I will probably not be on the show until Sunday when we do the crossover. So don't want to keep checking out that content. You guys all have a good day and peace out. And have a good weekend.